WE M1A1 Thompson submachine gun gas blowback. This is the original stock. Plastic, for the most part, it's fairly decently shaped, but it's not accurate enough for me. So I have an M1 Thompson submachine gun stock. Eventually this gun will be converted over to a M1. I have the M1L sight coming on early M1 Thompsons. Real grip. I'll explain a little bit with that later. Okay, with the Thompson submachine gun, it is an open bolt firearm. You have two selectors: safe, fire, single, full auto. Pretty basic. This gun seems like it's pretty good as far as construction is concerned. I don't like the front sight. It's loose, it's orange. It's gotta go at some point. When I get a real one, we'll see if it actually fits. The pin comes loose after shooting it. It is pinned on, so that's a plus. The foregrip can be swapped out with a real one. I haven't got one yet, but it actually has the angled threads on the grip mount, which was retained from the 1928, as the grip mounts were the same. As far as taking it down, you have a frame latch. This is the frame, not the lower receiver. It's the frame, and you have your receiver in your barrel. There's a frame latch. It's a little button right here. You push it forward. Now, before I do that, your selectors must be set to fire and full auto. If it's in safe, it will not work because you cannot go much farther. Your bolt will not stay in the forward position. Same with your fire control. If it's in single, you can catch the sear in there and damage the sear. So it has to be in full auto. Push your button, pull the trigger, and it slides apart. It's just like the real thing. Now if you look in here, in the frame, everything moves like it's supposed to. You have your trigger, your magazine catch, your bolt hold, if you will. This is your rocker. When that is in the single position, if it will cooperate with me, it pushes your disconnector forward. It will not let your bolt, when it comes back to the rear, it will catch on this, and it will not let it go forward again to fire another round until you let go of the trigger. Full auto, it moves out of the way and allows the bolt to travel in full auto mode. With the design of the M1, they eliminated the blish lock, and to simplify machining, and it was honestly unnecessary to begin with. They eliminated the oiler inside the cavity here, and they simplified the pilot. The old pilot on the 28 was kind of a top hat design. It was a two-piece pilot, and it in the buffer, which is this piece right here, was in the shape of a felt pad, and the spring was prone to being bent and damaged, really. So because in order to get that out, and I will show you because this is made differently than the actual gun, you have to push that out of the way and pull that out. Now on the real M1 or M1A1 Thompson, your pilot would push here and this buffer would come right out. And then your pilot would slide through that hole with the spring, reducing any chance of damaging the spring. But this particular piece, you have to push the pilot through the buffer, pull the buffer out, and I forgot a step here. Helps tremendously if you take the actuator knob out, because now you can just take the entire assembly out in one piece. For the most part, it takes down just like the real steel, and it will go back together the same way. But before we get that, the AEG, this is all one piece with the exception of your grip. The grip mount and the barrel is one piece, held together by 2 screws. So one of the inaccuracies of this design is this is not shaped right. Well, it's shaped right, but it's not big enough. And it needs quite a bit of Loctite, because it will come loose after shooting it. This is the front barrel assembly. You have your inner barrel, you have an outer barrel. This grip mount is actually a separate piece. Underneath here, it is screwed into the outer barrel. There is, I don't know if you can see it from here, but there's very little space in the outer barrel. So your inner barrel actually slides in with very little wiggle room. Stays like that. They go together. 3mm Allen key is all you need. Being aluminum, you don't want to over tighten it, because you will strip out those threads and virtually destroy it. As I said, your front ring, your sight ring is pinned. It is loose. I'm not sure. I have not tried to pull that pin yet, so I don't know if the OD on that muzzle is correct for a real front sight ring. Rear sight, I believe, is steel. I don't have a magnet with me. They put these off-color flathead screws in the top. On a real one, they would be riveted from inside here. As you can see on a real sight, it's just 4 through holes with a slight chamfer on them. The rivet would come through here, it'd be pressed, and the sight's not going to go anywhere. I don't know why they thought it would be a good idea to put 4 off-color screws. It kind of takes away the look of it, but it works. Assembly, pretty simple. Goes back the same way it came out. Can be a little tricky getting that pilot back to where it needs to go. And of course, putting it back together, everything slides right in place. And boom. Now let's talk a little bit about this grip. What I don't like about this grip is the shape. This is a real Thompson submachine gun grip made by Savage. There's a little S right there that denotes Savage. Biggest complaint, other than the shape, oh come on, we put helmet head screws on these. bear to keep your screwdriver in there, especially if you don't use the right size like me. And it is a long screw. The real one, there's not much of a counter bore right there, and it goes all the way to the frame. Where it would attach to the frame would be right in here, and obviously they put a nice big chunk of metal there, so I cannot put my original grip on my gun without modifying either the grip, the frame, or both. So that is a complaint. Hopefully they come out with a good looking wood kit and I don't have to destroy a piece of history or modify my gun and risk breaking it. It would be nice if they would just make things simple. Beyond that, the foregrip has the angled screw. Can't remember if I brought that up or not. They went with a milled style sling swivel instead of the stamped style that you would find on the AEGs. Kind of hard, well, not really hard to explain, but they look like they've been machined rather than stamped, even though they are cast. The magazine is made out of some sort of cast metal. I don't know if it's aluminum or some sort of steel. It's green gas or propane. The neat thing about this magazine is I'm not familiar with other green gas firearms. This is like firearms, airsoft guns. This is my first. There is a switch right here. When it's in the forward position, you can insert this magazine and dry fire the gun. With the switch to the rear, it pushes this lever up, which pushes up on the bolt hold open. That is called a trip. It pushes up on the trip. These ones are a little difficult to get in. And I can pull that trigger all day long. It's not going anywhere. Flip that little switch. Lever goes down. Come on. And I can dry fire. What else? Oh, with the bolt, in the field it was common practice to close the bolt, then insert the magazine. The reason for this is to keep debris out of your chamber. Of course, in combat, all you gotta do is retract it, take your safety off, and you're good to go. It's already loose. It doesn't work that way. Now, one of the common problems with the 1928 was this bolt has been designed to have two notches, well, three really if you consider this a notch, but two notches in the bolt. The 28 bolt had one. When the bolt was retracted to the rear, the safety would engage and not let the bolt forward. Now when the bolt was in the forward position, the safety could not engage. There was no notch to allow the safety to move. Because when this is pressed, when your sear is pressed, the safety will not move. So they put a notch there to allow the safety to function. But on the 28, that notch was not there. When the gun was dropped on its butt, it could cycle around. Now the hammer on these bolts, the 21, 28, and M1 bolts, the hammer was here. There was a floating firing pin, and there was actually a piece of metal here that the hammer would hit and engage the firing pin, so the round could actually fire. Well, they put that notch there, as I've said 1,000 times, so that your safety can go on, your bolt will not move. Take it off, lock it back, will not move. There's actually 3 positions to this bolt. Forward, full, and there's like, I don't know what you'd call it, but it catches so that it still goes. Because you actually kind of have to yank on this trigger a little bit. Last thing, kind of a complaint, is the markings. Let me see this. You have your typical airsoft Tommy gun markings, Auto Ordnance Corporation, Worcester, Massachusetts. No real Thompson submachine gun was ever made in Massachusetts. It was either made by Colt in Connecticut, Savage, I'm not sure where their plant was, but the address here would say either New York, USA, or Bridgeport, Connecticut. Wartime Thompsons were made in Bridgeport, Connecticut. With the Bridgeport, Connecticut address, I should say. The spacing on Thompson submachine gun is a little wide. This would actually be a little more condensed. The Thompson submachine gun letters would actually be a little bit taller than the rest of this. Caliber 0.6 millimeters. Come on, 45 caliber. Serial number here is in the 20 billion range. There were only 2 million Thompson submachine guns ever made. So, and the range, the number range for the M1A1 would be somewhere in the 400,000 to 800,000 range. So, other than that, for the most part, your pivot plate pins that come out of the left side of the frame are a little off in their shape. That is flattened for some reason. That would actually be a rounded half moon, if you will. This would be a rounded end of the pin. Other than that, for the most part, it at least looks like that is a separate piece. It's probably screwed in from the other side, but it at least gives the appearance of an actual ejector. These would be threaded into the receiver on this end here, and this is just a little pin to guide it into the correct position. The magazine catch, pretty basic, like the AEGs. It's probably a cast piece. The real ones, this would be a machine piece with a turned pin that would be riveted onto it. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with it. I don't think this thing shoots all that great at times. I don't know if it's the type of gas that I'm using or the gun itself, but it comes with a really cool speed loader. At least they got that going right. It's a Tyrannosaurus Rex, so says my son. Well, this concludes this video. Comments are welcome. Just be nice. Overall, it's a beautiful, beautiful gun. It's about time that we have a gas blowback Thompson. Been way too long. Check out the L sight that's going to go on this eventually. An original Thompson submachine gun sight with a grip, stock, butt plate.